Good morning.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Claire Albaum, and I'm the training manager with Michael Management. So every month we bring on one of our instructors, one of our experts in their field. So today's Q&A will be on sales and distribution and materials management. So Nicole will lead us through, give a bit of background about her work life, her courses, and then we will open up the floor for questions for Nicole. So we do ask that everyone stays muted, so we will not be unmuting your microphones, and you are able to write in your questions in the questions tab. So I know there's two different tabs, questions and chat. Please only put them in questions, and we will get through them accordingly as they come in. So our session last month lasted about an hour, and a majority of that time was spent on questions. So it's a great opportunity to ask your burning questions on SD and MM. So I will go ahead and hand it over to you, Nicole. Thank you so much for doing this for us today.
Not a problem. I'm going to actually start sharing my screen now, so everyone should be able to see. And just make sure I'm sharing the right screen, the correct screen here. Okay. All right. Well, again, my name's Nicole Land. I'm excited to be here with you all today. You're probably wondering at this point what makes me an expert. Well, I do have about 2 decades almost in the SAP industry. I think somewhere between 17 and 18 years now. I am certified, SAP certified in the production planning and manufacturing modules. So somebody at least thinks I'm a little qualified in that regard. And I have, again, almost two decades of experience with integrating the production planning and manufacturing modules with the MM module, the SD module, QM and IM modules, as well as bolt-on modules like the CRM module, GTS modules, just an entirely broad range of experience over my 2 decades. A little bit of background on me. I went to school for this. Like, I actually went and got a degree in management of information systems. I do remember back in the day, that was not a field of study that was widely known or, widely studied at that point. And I do remember my parents not really understanding what my major was and whether or not I might actually make any money at it. But here I am. I think I'm pretty successful, 25 years later. So once I graduated from college, my first exposure to SAP was being a super user on a global project. I worked for a company that was migrating from their legacy system to the SAP platform. And I was lucky enough to be chosen to participate on that project. So that was my first real exposure to SAP. And it just so happened to be right in line with my degree. So I felt like I was right on my career path, right where I wanted to be. From there, I slowly, over the course of, 17, 18 years, and it just so happened to progress right in line user to a functional business analyst, maybe some companies call it a systems analyst. And ultimately, right now, I'm actually my own boss. So I'm an independent consultant. I help clients all over the world who are struggling to either implement or use. A lot of my clients today, it's not necessarily an implementation they're struggling with. They implemented SAP years ago. They just need help using it because the implementation either didn't go smoothly or they don't have a solid training foundation that helps the organization grow and scale in the system. So that's been a lot of my work over the last, let's see, 7 to 8 years. I mentioned before, I specialize in several modules, and I think you'll notice the longer you're in SAP, it's hard to specialize in one without necessarily specializing in another, just because the system is so highly integrated. And if you're curious like I am, then it will definitely lead you into these rabbit holes, and you will definitely get a broad exposure and broad experience to other modules other than the one you're just focused on. So again, I'm specialized in production planning, the materials management, inventory management, sales and distribution, Quality management is one of my favorite lesser used modules, and then GTS. I did about 2 years as a GTS consultant. So why those modules? I think it's because I've always been curious about how things are made. I think there's that show on the Discovery Channel. I can't remember what channel it's, how is it manufactured? How is it made? Those kinds of things have always intrigued me. So I did kind of gravitate towards the manufacturing and production planning. But more importantly, those are processes, those are foundations, those are objects and business functions that virtually every single company, every single industry, from fashion to aerospace and defense to consumer electronics, you're going to be hard pressed to find a company that doesn't need someone with that skill set, that particular area of expertise when it comes to planning, manufacturing, and sales and distribution. It doesn't matter what you're making. You're going to need to make it, plan it, and sell it and distribute it to your customer base. So it makes you highly marketable, highly sought after in those regards. Let's talk about you. I don't want to talk about me. I want to help you figure out how to get your journey going. So a fun statistic, a fun fact, 75% of the world's daily transactions are processed through some form of an SAP application. So you're gonna be in demand, whether or not you focus on the sales and distribution module, whether you are a access systems expert or an ABAP developer, it doesn't really matter whether you're a functional person or a more technical resource. SAP is a highly sought after skill. So you just have to figure out which area of SAP suits you and your skill set best, and then go for it. You're gonna find work in this industry when it comes to SAP. Again, even from the fashion industry to the auto industry, you're gonna be in demand no matter what module or skill set you think you need to have. And how do you do that? How do you go about starting your own SAP journey? Well, I think there's 3 things. There's learning. How do you learn? Well, I think you're already in a great place. Micromanagement is a wonderful place to start. There is a wealth of training courses out on their site. The on-demand courses are heavily in demand now, especially with COVID, but we also have live courses available where you can join a jumpstart class and talk to a live instructor and have hands-on exercises as we guide you through learning a particular module. So you're already on your way. Applying that knowledge, you got to practice. It's use it or lose it, so if you don't have access to an SAP system at your current job, then you can also get access through micromanagement. There are subscriptions that you can purchase, so you can practice what you are learning at any given time. And the more you practice, the better you're going to be. And then finally, growing, obviously. So you're going to want to continue to advance your career. Look for positions that need SAP experience, even if that's within your own company. If, assuming, of course, your company is using SAP, find ways to make yourself valuable in the use of SAP. It may not always be obvious, and it may not be part of your job description at the moment, but the minute you prove yourself valuable, those dividends are going to pay off for sure. All right, so just in case we don't have any questions yet, these are a handful of questions I've been asked over the years. Why SAP? Why not Oracle or something else altogether? I think it was really more opportunistic than anything. Like I said, my first project was my company. Back when I just started out, they happened to be implementing SAP. So that happened to be the system that I learned. But I think looking back, there's a reason why they implemented SAP and not Oracle or another system. It's the leading ERP software out there. And I think that has just continued. They've continued to gain in the market share. They've continued to dominate. Oracle certainly dominates from a database perspective, but from an ERP perspective, SAP is really the dominant product out there. So again, you're not going to go wrong if you invest in your skill set with SAP. How would these skills translate? We all hear a lot about the S4HANA. SAP is moving towards the S4HANA. How would these skills translate or transition with the introduction of that? very well, quite frankly, especially from a functional perspective. And what I mean by functional is I configure the system to be used by a business. I configure the SAP system in regards to a particular module so that it can be used by an organization functionally. I'm not an ABAP developer. I am not a database specialist. So from a functional perspective, those skills will absolutely translate to the S/4HANA platform, because functionally there is very little difference. There are some significant improvements in the functionality for sure. But overall, the major changes when we transition into the S/4HANA system is at that database level, that HANA database level is where those differences are. So I think you'll find, again, functionally, your skills are going to translate very well. And how did I learn SAP? Trial and error. Seriously, trial and error. Again, I participated on a project as a super user that gave me exposure to consultants and functional experts, ABAP developers. I had access to them as we designed the system that my company would be using. So I learned about the data models. I learned about the configuration options. I learned how to use it as a user. And then I just continued learning from there by talking to people, talking to those experts, talking to people that had been doing it longer than me, asking questions, poking around, making mistakes. That is a big part of the journey. You just got to get in, you got to have a will to learn, and you can't be afraid to mess something up. Finally, is being certified worth the investment? I personally would say yes. You know, it's something that I've always wanted that tag on my name, right? We always want, some initials after our name that proves, we've gone the extra mile. But I can tell you there are many consultants out there that might disagree with me, probably disagree with me. And some of the most intelligent functional consultants I know are not certified. So that's really going to be a personal decision for you. It may or may not affect you long term. You'll still have plenty of options when it comes to employment, whether you're a consultant or a full-time employee. But for me, it was definitely worth the investment. For me, it was definitely worth proving to myself that that's something that I could do, because it is not easy. Like, there's a lot that goes into being SAP certified. So for me, it's more of a personal question. And my answer to that question is, yeah, it was totally worth the investment. Okay, so we're going to kind of open it up now to you guys. Hopefully we have some questions that have been staged. Claire, I'll turn it back on to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did have a question come in. And so as we go through this, since everyone is typing their questions in, feel free to type them in as we're talking, as they pop up. We will kind of go through them as they come in, but that way we won't have any lag between questions. So our first question for you, Nicole, is what was your most challenging SD project?
Anyone that interfaces with ECC to CRM. The integration points, when you start dealing with those interfaces, you have to really understand the data that is being interfaced. So what I mean by the CRM module, SAP, especially probably over the last 10 to 15 years, has done a fantastic job of acquisitioning functionality instead of writing the code themselves. And the CRM module is a great example of that. The customer relationship module, it was a much more robust system than what they offered in their core component, the ECC module. It offered a much more robust solution for customer management, from inquiries and quotations and things like that. So the most difficult project I had from an SD perspective was integrating those two systems and making sure that customers created, orders created, sales commissions that are calculated and charged off on a sales order, all of that replicated back over to the ECC side, because that's where the distribution happens. So from a CRM perspective, the order management, the customer, the pricing, all of that is managed in one system, whereas the distribution of the goods to those customers is handled in the ECC system. So making sure that those things line up and are kept in sync and are interfacing properly, that was, while I'd say difficult, it was challenging for sure, but those are the types of challenges that I think I enjoy the most, making sure that those interfaces are robust enough to handle any growth that the organization may have over the coming, life cycle of that company.
Okay, great. And we have another attendee who is asking why you decided to go into SD and MM over the other modules.
Again, I think it was, it's functionality that everybody has, everybody needs. So if, let's talk about the quality management module, for example. Not every company deals in products that are significant enough to require stringent quality controls, right? If I'm making pencils, I don't necessarily need a fancy tool to do my quality inspections and my quality control and my quality auditing. Whereas if I'm making pencils, I definitely need to plan the manufacturing of those pencils. I definitely need to plan the distribution and the sale of those pencils to my customers. So it's functionality that everyone has, regardless of what you're making or what you're selling, even software, right? McAfee, years ago, someone that I worked for, they're making software, yet they still used SAP for the manufacturing and the distribution of that software. So when you think of it in terms of that, those modules are going to be the highest, the modules that are used worldwide by far by any company, and you're going to have a much more wider, broader field of employment when it comes to looking for a job.
Wonderful, Nicole, thank you. And we have one more question coming in. It says, if you run into issues, what resources do you consider the best in getting help if consulting is not an option?
I would say MMC is a great start. And I guess it kind of depends on the issue. Are we talking about error messages in SAP? Are we talking about you have functionality that you know is out there in SAP and you just don't know how to use it? Issues could be a wide range of things. So I would say if it's things like error messages, you're getting an error message from SAP and you don't know what it means. The Michael Management website has a fantastic free resource that helps decode those error messages because sometimes they're very cryptic. If you, on the off chance, don't find help through that Michael Management resource, then Google that. There is, again, SAP forums out there. You are not the first person to get that error message. There is a ton of information out on Google that will help you decode and most likely resolve whatever error message you're getting. If we're talking about issues like, there's functionality in SAP that will do what you need it to do, you just don't know what it is or where it is or how to get it or how to use it. Training, again, Michael Management would probably, if consulting is not a solution for you, I would suggest the Michael Management website again, because you can search that functionality or you can search for particular videos that might demonstrate, on-demand videos that might demonstrate how that process or how that thing is transacted in SAP, and then that might help you get the ball rolling within your own organization to get those things deployed. Standard SAP, in my 20 years, I have yet to come across a business process or business function that cannot be handled with standard SAP. It may be a little clunky. It may be, you may be able to make it more efficient with some customization, but all in all, if there's something you need to do, whether it's from materials management, production planning, sales and distribution, quality, doesn't matter. Standard SAP, more often than not, is going to have a solution. It's just a matter of you being able to figure out what that is, figure out how to use it, and then figure out how to train your employees on it.
Thank you. Okay, and we have another question asking, how did you land your first entry-level position in sales and distribution?
Oh man, now we're challenging my memory. Well, assuming we're not counting my super user project, because I was, plucked from I was basically specializing in data analysis at that point. They plucked me out of my data analysis role to participate on the project as a super user. From there, just putting SAP super user on my resume, and I had a lot of experience with the SD module at that point as a super user, just putting that on my resume and actively pursuing the roles that I knew I wanted. So an entry-level business analyst or an entry-level functional analyst, having that on your resume and displaying some basic skills in that module, I was able to be hired by an electronics, they made little microchips for like cell phones and things like that. I was able to be hired into that role. Now, I wasn't being hired as an expert, obviously, but I did have enough skills to be able to go in at an entry level, which then allowed me to participate on even more implementation projects where I just continued to build my experience by being exposed to the system and being exposed to other experts.
Very cool. And what advice do you have for a new SAP consultant?
Have faith in yourself. It is a scary leap to leave the security and the comforts of full-time employment with benefits and all of those things, but I've always wanted to be my own boss. Like, there's just nothing I've ever wanted more than this. And there were days that I thought, no, that the risk is too high and the reward is not worth it. And then there were days like I couldn't think of anything else. So I think just having faith that that's truly what you want. You have to understand there are risks, and you have to understand that there are safety nets you have to have in place for yourself financially and emotionally. You have to have a good support system. I have one myself. My husband has been very supportive. But you have to plan for the periods where you may not be employed. That's just a part of it. But I will also say this, as an SAP consultant, the second best piece of advice I could give you is to find a staffing agency or a contracting agency that will kind of do the work for you and find that client, right? I have one that I work with, and they have just been tremendous. I think I've been consulting somewhere between 5 and 7 years now at this point, and I've only gone 3 months without work, and that was because I chose to do that. I wanted a break. I needed a break, so I chose to take that break. So I can honestly say that if you want it bad enough, you understand the risks, if you prepare for any time you may not be employed, but more importantly, you partner with a staffing agency that is going to promote you and get you out in front of those clients, you're going to be successful and you're going to be employed for the long run.
That's awesome advice, Nicole. Thank you. And at this moment, I don't have any more questions in the queue, but we can hold on for maybe a minute or so longer. If you want to kind of wrap things up, and if anything sprinkles in, I will ask them. But overall, I think oh, you know what? Perfect. I said that. Let's see. Did that come in? Nope. My apologies. That was someone's hand raised. So yeah, if someone's hand is raised, go ahead and just put that question into the box. We'll go ahead and continue on so that we are respectful of your time, Nicole. And if any questions come in these last few minutes, I will let you know. But for now, take it away. And we are excited to hear about your courses. So thank you again so much.
Sure. So these are some of the on-demand courses I have published on the micromanagement website. They are not SD related. These are more production planning and manufacturing related. I feel like the need for this training content is kind of lacking in my experience. So I'd like to have, I think there is great content out on the micromanagement website in regards to sales and distribution. I will certainly be contributing to that over time, but at this point I have tried to focus on delivering content that I felt was not widely available yet. So my courses, these are my courses. If you're interested in taking my courses, I've given you a coupon code. It's SAP GO, giving you 10% off any of those courses. And it is set to expire at the end of the year, but if you don't get around to using it and you would like to try to use it next year, just reach out and we can extend the expiration date. So don't think that that expiration date is locked in. I would rather you, participate in the course, learn something that'll be useful in your SAP journey than, try to make an extra buck. So don't worry about that expiration date. But that is all I have at this point. So if there are more questions, we can certainly jump back to that.
But at this point, I think you did a fantastic job of answering them all. So we don't have any as of now. But as everyone saw Nicole's courses, please check them out. They are fantastic. And Nicole and I also do live training courses together. And she also leads our monthly access walkthrough. So if you have an SAP system with us, Nicole walks you through that, gives some advice for new SAP users. And this will also be on our YouTube channel. So it is being live streamed right now. So if you want to go back.
Claire, did I lose you?